Good morning. It is July 12th, and we return after a break. We all decided, or maybe I decided, that I didn't care for doing anything on the 5th of July. Dr. Gardner is blaming me, of course. Online today, we got Dr. Dave Gardner, Dr. Dave Shetlar, and we have a newcomer. Henry Rice has joined us this morning. Dr. Gardner, take it away with an update on the weeds.
Well, good morning, everybody. Yeah, I was all excited to share this last week, but I figured it would probably wait for a week. Yeah, because anytime that I can change up my narrative a little bit, that's a good thing. But I don't know, maybe you won't consider it a good thing after I'm done talking. But I wanted to touch on the topic of herbicide resistance. And so this is a big problem in production agriculture. And see, what happens is that plants don't magically become resistant to our herbicides. What happens is that you have genetic variability in a crop species, and every now and again you have a seed that germinates that is able to resist the mode of action of a particular herbicide. And if that particular weed is allowed to complete its life cycle, flower and set seed, then all of a sudden you have a population of weeds that are no longer susceptible to the herbicides that you are using. And so when that happens, one of the misconceptions is that you can just up the rate of the pesticide, and it's like, no, that won't work. Changing to a different chemical in the same chemical class will not work either, nor even will changing to a different chemical that's in a different chemical class if it has the same mode of action. And so on the label, there is this guidance that will tell you what mode of action your herbicide is. And so if you want to be preventative when that is possible, you should rotate amongst the different herbicides that are available, the different groups. The problem with that, of course, is that most people are in this business to make money by pleasing the client. And so if they find something for a reasonable price that works, they tend to stick with it. Well, we have seen reports that are either isolated or regional or widespread of resistance to different herbicides with crabgrass, goosegrass. So for example, goosegrass, we don't use the pre-emergence herbicides that we use for crabgrass in this part of the country because goosegrass is not susceptible to them. Also, buckhorn plantain, that's a more recent one that became resistant to the phenoxy herbicides. And so haloxyphene methyl, one of the active ingredients in Game On, is pretty important for that. There's also isolated incidences of resistance with ground ivy and annual bluegrass. But this last week, or actually it's been a couple of weeks now, we got a report of a suspicion of resistance to the group 4 herbicides with white clover, which, unlike some of those other weeds on the previous page, yes, they're a problem, but they're a lot less frequently observed. White clover and dandelion are more ubiquitous. They're everywhere. And so if we have white clover that becomes resistant to our broadleaf herbicide chemistries, that might be a problem, right? And so there was a report of possible resistance to group 4 herbicides received actually last week at a golf course in Ohio. Superintendents tend to do pretty good at applying herbicides correctly, and the picture seemed pretty convincing. It was, like living white clover surrounded by other weeds that had, been controlled the way that they're supposed to with the product. So there is a follow-up application that is occurring now to verify whether or not this is a problem. But if it is, it's going to be big, because what I have on this chart here are the different herbicides that we use primarily for post-emergence broadleaf weed control, and the different colors correspond to the different modes of action. And you will note that just about everything that we use is mixtures of the products that are in green. So the phenoxys and the pyridinoxys, so triclopyr, clopyrrolid, MCPA, 2,4-D, dicamba, etc. The group 14 products, in almost all cases, are contact herbicides, which would not help us all that much with a perennial weed like dandelion or white clover. And so that leaves the group 2 materials. Pinoxylum is a little bit too phytotoxic to ryegrass and not used that much in this part of the country. So we're basically left with flurazulum. Okay. So what I advised the superintendent to do was to go out and retreat part of the area with the product that they used to rule out that there wasn't a problem with the application, but also to try either mesotrione, which we don't traditionally use for broadleaf weed control, but it certainly is an option, or flurazulum, and then follow up with the turf team. My point in telling you this story is this. If you go out and you spray a broadleaf herbicide that's meant to control all of the different broadleaf species, and you get great control of everything except for one that you usually get control of, So ground ivy we usually have a problem with, wild violet we usually have a problem with. But if it's something that you usually get really good control of, and now all of a sudden you're not, dandelion, plantain, white clover, etc., follow up with us. I can give you some suggestions, and then like we can notify the state and try to develop some strategies to hopefully prevent the spread of said resistant population. The other thing that I wanted to mention is crabgrass has become, quite noticeable in people's landscapes, and so it's time to be treating it. For crabgrass control, most people use quinclorac, although topramazone, mesotrione, and phenoxyprop certainly are options. With quinclorac, though, I want to caution what this chart is showing is that quinclorac has different levels of efficacy at different growth stages of crabgrass. It works really well early. So like at 1 to 2 leaf stage, that's the blue line at the top where I'm getting 80% control. It works great on late stage crabgrass. So, like after you see seed heads and it's tillered, that's the purple line. If you have 2 to 4 tiller crabgrass, you see where it looks like the orange line dips below 0. Yeah, so in those plots where I treated with quinclorac, I actually ended up with more crabgrass than I would have if I had left it alone. It's like it made it mad and then it rebounded and regenerated. And so try to avoid using quinclorac when crabgrass is in the early tillering stage. Every year I have contract trials that I do at the OTF Center where they ask me to make the applications between 2 and 4 tiller, and it's a quinclorac based product. And this year is no different than any other year. When I go out there, I can't actually tell what the untreated control is compared to the plots that I allegedly sprayed. Okay. Those products would have worked a lot better had I started that trial here in a couple of weeks when the crabgrass is 4 tiller. So if you're using quinclorac, just wait. Okay. Alternatively, if you use a half a rate of topramazone and a half a rate of quinclorac, you can go out with that just about any time. Also know that if you use quinclorac and you have a problem with goosegrass, barnyard grass, or foxtail, what I'm trying to show here is that the seed head is the best way to identify those grassy weeds. Know that quinclorac has no activity on any of those. And so you would want to use either phenoxyprop or mesotrione or topramazone for the control of things like goosegrass, barnyard grass, field paspalum, Johnson grass, or the foxtails. And that's what I have for today. Sorry I rambled for too long.
No, Dr. Gardner, some important news there. Following that up, Henry, what have you got, sir?
Hello, everybody. I'm a new showy to the podcast. I'm filling in for Dr. Wu while she's traveling. I'm a graduate student, so I just wanted to share some updates from our program. Past week or so, I've been working to pick up the nematode samples that everybody has been sending in for the Ohio Nematode Survey. So thank you, everybody that has sent in and continues to send those in. We're going to be processing those over the next couple weeks and get some people some good information about their nematodes. So thank you for everybody for that. I wanted to share my screen here and show this week I've been working on this plot setup, which is our Japanese beetle trial. We are testing some products to see how they affect the egg laying behavior of the Japanese beetles. So you can see my plot all drawn up, as well as each individual cage with Japanese beetles in here. Whole lot of work, but hopefully we'll get some good results and get some good info about that. As well, we've been setting up our black lights, and I've collected some insects here to take pictures of. So we've been having these insects fly this past week. Here we've got what I believe is a virgin tiger moth. Dave can feel free to chime in if I make any mistakes with my IDs here. Some of the big, beautiful beetles we have. We have our reddish brown stag beetles coming out this week. I love seeing that. It's a female here. As well, I had a overwhelming majority of our northern masked chafers showing up in the trap. This is probably the most common insect by a long shot. And I also found a couple of our Ailanthus webworms. So got plenty more insects to ID in the bunch, but blacklight trap is going, and we are collecting. So that's what I got for today. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, Henry. We get you to unshare. All right, there we go. Dr. Shetlar, follow that up.
Thanks, Henry, and next time we'll probably have you mention something about the ant studies. You and Dr. Wu have a really large ant study up in Clyde, Ohio. And of course, you've been doing a lot of work on the annual bluegrass weevil. I guess I'd put a pitch in for our summer field day. Both Dr. Wu and Henry will be giving talks there and updates on what they're doing. And I'll be giving an update on the ornamental insects. So feel free to look that up on the OTF website. My report this week on the insects, I think I've got some really good news. We just had a hurricane that came through. And it came through at the ideal time to bring us or to grace us with the fall armyworm. They didn't arrive. I've run my light trap for the last 2 nights and I haven't got a single one. So, and I've been talking with our field crop people. Are they getting them in their pheromone traps? And they say just very small background numbers. So I don't think we're going to be graced with an armyworm outbreak this year. Of course, I always have to say, give me another couple of weeks just to be sure, but there's no indication, at least with the adults that we're seeing. Now, Henry showed you some mass chafers. I've been monitoring those in my light trap here at home. 2 weeks ago, I got over 400 in one night. This week, I've been getting less than 40 per night. Last night, I got 3. So I think we could say that 2 weeks ago was the peak flight. There's still a few of them sort of dribbling along and laying eggs, but what that means is that usually 2 weeks, sometimes 3 weeks after the peak flight is the time that we have peak egg hatch. So we're about a week away from that. What does that mean? Well, for those of you that have had some trouble getting grub control with your insecticides, especially if you're using imidacloprid or merit type products that seem to not be as efficacious as they were several years ago, putting the maximum amount of that material down right at egg hatch, or when you've got the first instar white grubs feeding in the soil thatch interface, will maximize your control. If you're using almost any of the other grub registered grub insecticides, that should not be an issue. Especially if you're using some of the diamide chemistry, things like acelepryn and tetrino. Those could have gone down all the way back in May, and you should get great control. But if you haven't put them down, and I do recommend, my feeling is we're going to have a good grub year this year. We're having just the right conditions. We're getting rain fronts coming through at just the right time to hydrate the eggs that have been laid in the soil. And once those eggs hydrate, they're good to go. Even if we get a drought period or a heat period, they're going to hatch out. The little first instars will generally survive even in fairly dry soil. So watch out. We are probably scheduling to get ourselves a good grub season this year. And I would recommend, if you've got people that have high quality turf, that they're seeing Japanese beetles around, or you've seen those mass chafers, you still have time to get your grub insecticides down, probably until the end of the first week of August. And so think about that with your clients, or if you're on a golf course and haven't made those applications, you might want to consider those. That's all I've got for this week.
Thank you, Dave. you know, the thing when you make a comment about I have good news and you talk about a hurricane from the south, every single person other than entomologists is like, oh no, what is he bringing? But you did follow up with some relatively good news. On the disease front, things have relatively calmed down. The one thing we have noticed a little bit up here is that with the warmer temperatures, but not extreme heat, anytime rain has fallen, algae has decided to pop out relatively quickly on some of the cultivars, particularly anything that's got lower levels of density. Most of the rest of the last kind of 10 days have been pretty recuperative. A lot of home lawns I've noticed in the Cleveland area have come back from brown to mixed green brown. So recovery is ongoing, and temperature and forecast is relatively promising for the next 5 to 7 days, with some moisture sprinkled around. So it's one of those that kind of sit there and watch it. It's going to do its own thing and recover. Maybe towards the middle part of next week, if you want to put out some slow release, maybe a small mix of quick release, slow release fertilizer that might help the recuperative process. Just don't overload it. Small amounts are needed, and that's it. With that, we will wrap it up and we will talk to you all next week. Thank you, everybody.